So, just a quick thing to ask you from last week, these little assignments that we were doing, perspective and humility we were working with, perspective and humility. And actually, before we actually get started, I do want to go back to our motivation. And a lot of us have set motivations throughout the morning, but let's again to really reconstitute, to make sure that our minds are directed in the best way. We're doing this for all living beings. We're getting together and meeting to talk about how to bring joy into our hearts, our lives. But the real purpose is, can we fold it into our practices that will move us, catapult us along to that place of enlightenment, of awakening. But the reason is so then we are unlimited in how we can best serve all living beings. Just take a moment feeling that in your heart. And related to perspective and humility, I want to lead this meditation. Before we talk about different stories or experiences of the week, meditation related to perspective and humility that comes from the Lam Rim about a precious human rebirth, appreciating our precious human rebirth or perfect human rebirth. So first, just allow yourself to notice your breathing. Notice the respiration. As you do, make sure your body's in the right position with the spine as extended as possible. If you're seated in a chair, have the feet straight, flat on the floor, or they could be on a little cushion, but so the body's balanced. But let's just allow ourselves to relax for a moment. As you begin to deepen the inhalation and deepen the exhalation. And as you do this, notice any places in the body you're holding tension, and let that exhalation sweep out that tension. Let the inhalation bring in some space to the tension. So before we can meditate, it's very important to allow ourselves to relax. We tend to skip that step. And then the meditation is a little blocked coming forth. So I'd like you to just consider right now, just the life that you are living right now. And I'd like you to first just focus on the positive qualities of your life, the circumstances. For instance, that you have food, shelter, and clothing that's actually easily accessible for you. We have relatively clean air to breathe, relatively clean water to drink that is easily accessible. The water comes right out of the tap. We don't have to carry it. Think about electricity, access to the internet, your loving family and friends. Maybe you have a vehicle. Think about our decent public education, or perhaps higher education if you've had it. And expand out and get creative to think of all these wonderful advantages of your life right now. So while we may have some problems, when we lend perspective to the problems, again, as I said last week, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of all of these wonderful advantages you have in your life, it changes our perspective on our problem. So again, as you continue to reflect, feel that seed of gratitude growing in your heart, that deep appreciation. This is your precious human rebirth. Because not only do you have those circumstances, those advantages, but you've met the Dharma. And it doesn't get any better than that. So breathe in that appreciation and let it soak through your skin, your bones, the organs, all the way down to a molecular level. And let it wash through every thought and idea so that your body and mind is permeated with this gratitude. Second step here, take a moment right now to reflect on your good qualities. On your good qualities. You have many. Sometimes we never acknowledge that. We have to give ourselves some space every day to acknowledge while we make mistakes, and we're human beings, we're not perfect, we have many good qualities. Please reflect on those qualities. And again, allow that wave of appreciation to soak through you, body and mind. And then bring yourself back into your space. Just can you make a determination in your mind right now, just for a moment, that based on this fantastic opportunity that you have, you're going to make some small adjustment to step up your Dharma practice. Just think what you can realistically do, something you've been putting off. Make that commitment right now to yourself. And please relax. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So these pillars of joy actually very nicely can correspond to some of the Lamrim meditations, which I find helpful because you can read about them and you can read about the Lamrim, but we need to meditate on it as well. We need to have it sink a little deeper in our hearts. And it's from there that you start making those realistic adjustments in your practice. To say, I think I can do this now, instead of putting it off, like that. So it's really important. And we'll go on in another class with another meditation about how with the precious human rebirth, also it can trigger humility, from thinking about that as well. So just want to hear any notes, any ideas from the past week of perspective and humility, which are the first two pillars of joy we were discussing last week. Some of you, I got some emails from people saying, I put it on my refrigerator, so any comments on how that went for the week? I'm just curious that anybody cares to mention. Peggy?
I did a practice of giving the victory to others and just listening more. And
wow, fantastic.
And I was cognizant of doing it, and it really worked out well.
Wow, inspiring. Thank you. Thank you. So offering the victory to others, as many of you know, is lojong. mind training, very powerful verse of, I think, verse number 5 of the 8 verses of mind training. And that's a huge space to be able to offer that like that. Fantastic. Yeah. Anybody else care to comment? I can't, for some reason, I can't see everybody on my screen. So, but it looks like Mary's looking. So, okay.
Vasanta has a feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. I cannot see. Just a second.
Okay. Now I've got everybody. Great.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Venerable Amy, for all your wonderful teachings. I really enjoyed them in the past, and especially last week. It was just, I felt like you were talking to me, especially talking about boss and work situation. Yeah. But I do have a different question. What you said about your crosswords and puzzles that you were trying to let go of during your retreat. So it came to my meditation next morning, and I was thinking, well, why do we have to let go of those things? Because they actually help us cognitively. And I do all kinds of things to help my cognitive health, because first of all, my mom had Alzheimer's, and then I want to have a cognitive health so I can continue practicing Dharma, you know. So I was just wondering if there's any specific way, I mean, reason that you wanted to let go of it. I mean, I'm certain that you, I mean, I can say certain or not, but anyway, I was just thinking, instead of, we can just say, in addition to, we can do our practices, not that we are shirking our practices, right? So we can do our practices, but in addition to our practices, we can still keep our, like, I don't know, habits or, you know, but they are helpful for us. You know, it's like a physical exercise. You don't want to say, well, I'm going to do my practices all day and sitting, you know, and not exercising, you know. So you would also prioritize your health. So in addition to practices, I will do my exercises, my physical workout, and my mental workout. So I don't know.
Yeah, so basically, again, you use the word prioritize, which is a great word. Think about priorities. So again, when I was doing these puzzles, and really they weren't a lot of puzzles, you know, it was like a crossword but it was each day. And what happened is I got in the habit of doing it when I was here, when I was first visiting my parents, when they got the newspaper, you know, but I don't get the newspaper every day. So I was printing it out, which was no big deal. But what happens is I would only do it when I was here in between trips, meaning teaching tours. So it would be like for 2 weeks. But when I'm here for a year now, I've been at home for a year. It's kind of momentous after 16 years on the road. I started realizing it was taking up a lot of time. If you add it up, it's a lot of time for me. That's my priority. I was like, and there were some things I wanted to do with my practice that I kind of went, I don't feel like I've got enough time. So something has to go for me. Something needs to get out. And I just realized that, you know, that I don't need to do all those every day. I have not given up the New York Times Sunday puzzle, not giving that up. Okay, but so that was just for me, that cognitive health is important, physical health is important. However, without the Dharma practice, you have to understand how you're participating in your karma, which is your Dharma practice. I have to work with my mind daily as much as I can, okay, in daily events. And I can't stress how important doing some retreat every year is, whether it's as a group, whether it's a day, whether it's on your own, you know, to lengthen that time each year to get more familiar with the space, because then I start participating in my karma in a better, brighter way, okay, that not only is going to get me to a place where I'm unlimited in helping all living beings, but that's what could dismantle the cause of having Alzheimer's. So it's not just about, I'm in really good physical shape. I've heard so many students say to me when I'm visiting them or teaching at their place or staying with them in their home, I always ate the right food. You know, I mean, there's a couple that I've stayed with overseas, and they're great. And they've hosted me to teach, and she got cancer some years ago. And she said to me, it really threw her, and she wasn't really into the Dharma at the time. Her husband was. So she said, I always ate the right food and I exercised. I always did these things. And then I got cancer. Okay. Like that was a cause for the cancer. Now, we know people that have smoked cigarettes to the age of 99 and lived to be 99 without lung cancer and died of something else, right? How is it possible, right? Karma. It's karma. If the cause is in there to get cancer, it doesn't matter how physically fit you are. It doesn't matter how many organic foods you've eaten. Doesn't matter. And there's people who abuse their body and they're never in the hospital, never have a problem. So you start looking at what's the cause of this. So again, taking care of ourselves externally is important, but with balance, where I'm not doing it to an extreme that is interfering with the Dharma practice that I want to do. That's how it's been for me. Does that help? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's talk about some other things with joy, and we're going to go look at another pillar as well. We know that many religions have a strong conviction that we can't discover lasting happiness through our senses. So this is another component of joy for you. Most of you know this. Most of you are familiar. You know, while temporary enjoyment can come through our senses, there's nothing wrong with that. Like it could be me doing the puzzles or having ice cream or, you know, going out for a walk in a park. And but we know those things, those feelings we get of the high, the enjoyment, it's fleeting. It's not the source of enduring satisfaction. We're not going to get that long lasting, deeper contentment from that. Okay. And there's a Buddhist saying, again, as you know, that through sensory gratification, okay, if we're trying to get happiness that way through our senses, it's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. You're drinking salt water, it will just make you thirstier. Doesn't quench the thirst. So as you can, what I'd love you to do this week is I'd like you to spend time watching your mind, okay? When you gravitate to that sense pleasure, there's the chocolate. Oh my goodness, right? There's the pizza, you know, or I'm going to do this outing with this friend and we're going to this park and I just can't wait. And the flowers are going to be out and this is going to be happening. Or I'm going skiing and I'm all excited and I'm going to do that. I'm going to see this person, or there's some event right now because so many of us are staying home. It's challenging, but look at the thing where, oh, you decided tonight you're going to watch that movie. And look at the whole maneuvering around it of like, oh, great. I'm going to get all this done. Then I have the movie. Then I have the movie. Like there's going to be some, you know, great time watching the movie that, you know, and what happens is the movie is mundane. The pizza's mundane, that, you know, not, but the thing is, watch how the mind kind of goes out like this. I can't wait to be entertained like this. I can't wait to be entertained. In fact, I need that entertainment in my life every day. For me, it's because I'm so into food. For me, it's dried figs. Okay, now don't send me dried figs. I'm not asking, please. I don't need any dried figs, but it's one of my favorite foods. You know, regular figs and dried figs, but right now they're dried because they're not in season. So for me, I snack on them, but just minimal. And I kind of really look forward to like, okay, now I'm going to have a fig. So I watch the mind that goes out, you know, eat the chocolate and enjoy it. When you're doing it, be there with it, but you want to see it for what it is. See it for what it is. This is Lama Zopa Rinpoche. This so helped me with things like this, okay? Everybody, most people like chocolate, okay? And you say chocolate to people and you offer a box of chocolate to people and you see their eyes light up and which one are they gonna pick? And it's all exciting, okay? So Rinpoche said, but let's be realistic about the chocolate, okay? He said, the pleasure of the chocolate, the real pleasure, if you check, okay, is from here to here, the mouth to the throat. Once it passes there and you swallow, it's really, there's a little aftertaste, but it's gone. So really think about that. Can you be there with it when you're eating it? What happens is, how many times have you eaten chocolate with guilt? Chocolate is not meant to be eaten with guilt. I don't eat my dried figs with guilt. I don't be like, oh, I shouldn't. No, eat it. But I see people reaching for a box I've offered them and go, oh no, I shouldn't. But they have it in their hand and they take the bite with the should in their mouth. Okay. That's how that's toxic. That's how we poison ourselves. Okay. Shoulding on ourselves, as we say. So again, look at your sense things, your sense pleasures. You're about to get in the bath. You know, you put the special lotion in, whatever it is. Oh, the bath, I'm gonna, you know, and you see how, so again, temporary happiness, temporary joy, but it's not the lasting thing, you know. And for me, and again, if your practice starts really unrolling in a nice way, and I'm having a really nice time, I'm spending the whole morning now until noon in practice. I'm able to kind of keep those sessions going because it's been rich from the retreat. And what I've noticed is if you can build something like that seriously. So in January, there's one day that usually falls in January, Tibetan calendar, that's a special tantric day of the year of a certain deity. And a lot of us do self-initiation of this deity on that day. But to do a full self-initiation takes 3 to 4 hours minimum. So this year, I always do it, and sometimes I've done it by myself, and I do the whole setup, and I just spend part of that afternoon doing that. And this time, a few of us were talking, what should we do it on Zoom? Do you want to do it together? What are we going to do? And it ended up that the London Center hosted one, and a friend of mine led it, and she was in Northern Scotland. It was fantastic, and there were 80 people from around the world. Like people got up in the middle of the night in Singapore to join us, and so there were 80 of us on this Zoom thing for several hours, and we kind of rolled it out through the day. We just, for me, it was daytime. For some, it was more evening. And there were breaks, and then you come back, and they're like, okay, go have a drink. And for me, when we finished, I was higher than anything. For days, I was like, not really high, but I'm just saying I was so exhilarated. So you want to get to a place where the practice, you're tasting it deeply and it's coming alive for you. It's so helpful because that's where you're really going to get the deep contentment. The super deep joy is going to come from that. So spend a little time this week as you look at the sense faculties and the sense pleasures and just see. And the thing is, all you need is your awareness. It's not a trip. Like I don't sit down to do the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle and I don't feel guilty doing it. I do not feel guilty. I'm like, this is what I'm doing right now. And I do it with awareness. I'm like, this is my little break time right now. I just need a break. We all need breaks. I go out for a walk. I don't feel guilty. You know, you need some sunshine, you need some fresh air. There's certain things that we do, and we all have different levels, you know, where it's hard for people, or people that, I don't really think that's the case here, but people that gravitate to drugs, excessive alcohol, substances like that to get their fix for their break, because we know that can do damage. Doesn't really help, but we all have our ways that we take breaks. So when you're noticing the sense faculty, just start with the awareness of like, oh, right, I'm really looking at this piece of cake like this is going to do it for me, but I do want the piece of cake. So then have it, eat it, and enjoy it. And as you're enjoying it, and you can first offer it too. Think about offering it to beings that are hungry all the time, that would never think about offering to your merit field. Like imagine a group of holy beings in front of you. and imagine them being completely blissed out by your offering, like that. So there's ways we can, and then because they enjoy it, I'm going to enjoy it. And then you enjoy, and then it's over. Then it's done. You have the pizza. My issue with pizza, I don't really eat pizza, but is if my brother would invite me over is I can't stop at 2 pieces. 2 pieces is enough, but I need to go for that 3rd piece. I'm not being realistic. I end up with the 3rd piece and then I'm sick and then I don't feel well. So again, let's just participate with our senses to kind of see how it works a little bit more realistically. And then can you make a small adjustment? Something you've been interested in Dharma practice. Some of you may want to think about setting up your meditation practice or deepening a meditation practice. So can you kind of look at this week, next week, the week in between? What can I do? Could I just sit for 5 more minutes maybe? Sit for 5 more minutes. Can I get that Dharma book out that I've been wanting to read? Like that. Let's do it now because time's going. Time's going. We put stuff off till later and then we're too old to do it. Too old to do it like that. So when we talk about experiencing happiness, okay, there's really, as we know, there's 2 different kinds of happiness. Again, the first, this enjoyment of pleasure through the senses. And, but we also have that happiness again that I'm talking about at a deeper level. Again, how does it come in? Through our mind. It comes in through our mind, such as through love, compassion, generosity. And I'm talking about love, not attachment. Let's be clear, not attachment, pure unconditional love. I just read a story in our local newspaper, the Inquirer. And the nice thing they did is they, on Sundays now, a few years ago, they started a section called The Upside that's all good news. I was so proud of them for doing that because people say, oh, the news, it's all atrocious, right? The Upside. And I love to read that section. And through that section, I made a few small donations to some of the groups. It was great, So there's a woman who feeds people, homeless people, 2,000 homeless people in Philadelphia. She started it several years ago, and she cleans houses for a living. And it's part of a church that's right downtown Philadelphia. And she said, so they interviewed her, and she said, yeah, in the beginning, I had expectations that I'd be feeding these people, providing food for them, and then they'd be able to feel better, and then they'd be able to get off the street, and then they'd get a job, and that doesn't really happen because some of the people are substance abusers or alcoholics or addicts and things, and for some people it's just not possible. So she talked about lowering the expectations, but she talked about giving love. And she said that, and some people said, you're not going to get anything back from this. People are not going to repay you. And some of the even homeless people said to her, do you expect something from me? You're not going to get anything back from me. And she said, no, I'm just going to love you anyway. And she talked a lot about the love, which really was this pure unconditional love. She wasn't attached to the outcome. She wasn't attached to what they were going to do for her. She didn't need it for her self-esteem. She knew who she was. She felt fine how she was. So think about your love when you're exerting love, thinking about love, practicing love. Are there strings attached to it? That I'm expecting something back and I really hope this person reciprocates and I want to hear thank you from them and I want to see this happen. So, because attachment's all about me, what I need out of it. Love is all about the other person being happy. I wish happiness for you. I wish happiness for them. Okay. So this deeper level through our mind, what I noticed after that practice in January, that group practice we were doing was, and this was already, we were 10 months into the pandemic. So I was home 10 months and I was happy to be home, but I also noticed how there were parts of my practice that weren't kind of fully where I wanted them to be. And I'd gotten into those habits. I was kind of shortcutting things And I was spending a lot of time on email and, you know, like that. So I slowly thought, and so after that practice in January, the group practice we did, I just noticed how it lit me up. And then, and so that inspired me. It was like, okay, let's continue. Let's keep on. And then I knew I'd already set the February boundary to do retreat. So again, but I realized that's where the joy was coming from my mind, from my mind. So you can have so much more joy. You can have so much more happiness when you're working with your mind regularly and deeply. And when you develop that practice, and again, it's an evolution. Slowly, the practice develops. So I did want to mention that again, experiencing happiness at a deeper level through the mind, like those good qualities. And again, what characterizes happiness at this deeper level is the sense of fulfillment you experience. The sense of fulfillment, think about it, the sense of fulfillment you experience. So while the joy of the senses is brief, the joy at this deeper level is much longer lasting. It's actually true joy, true joy. And then as a result of that, it attracts you more to it. And then you say, I need to do the activities that are getting me closer to that, closer to that. So continuing on, different scientists, psychologists and things, we talked a bit about this last week. There's a guy, Richard Davidson, a neuroscientist. He talks about 4 independent brain circuits that influence lasting well-being. I think we touched on this last week as well, just as a reminder, refresher. Think about these brain circuits, okay? And think about, this is another exercise this week, if you'd like to do it. How are you recovering and managing your mental states? Here's number 1. Okay, these are the 4 independent brain circuits. Okay, first is our ability to maintain positive states. Our ability to maintain positive states. Look at how that's going for you this week. How does that work? Are you, some of you I know, and some of you I know are always very positive, very optimistic, and and it's great. And you're generally unfazed by a lot of other stuff. So think about maintaining, my ability to maintain. Okay. Number 2, our ability to recover from negative states. How well do you recover? Because I've met people where they're great out the door in the morning, everything's going well. Something happens initially at work, and they lose it the rest of the day. They just are in a snit the rest of the day, right? So again, this is about picking ourselves up, dusting off, being aware of what's happening. Can I learn from this? What happened? Continuing on in a positive way. How well do you recover? Look at that. Look at that this week. 3rd circuit. Also independent, but essential to the others, our ability to focus and avoid mind wandering. Ability to focus and avoid mind wandering. This is about building that meditation practice as well. Some placement meditation, meaning we do generally 2 types of meditation in this tradition. Placement meditation, which is what most people think of as meditation, meaning you place your mind on an object. You can close your eyes and think of an object. In my mind, I bring up that object, maybe an image of the Buddha, something like that. And I want to keep my mind focused on that image as long as possible. My concentration goes off, I bring my mind back. Goes off, bring it back. Okay? Stabilizing meditation, also called in Tibetan shine, calm abiding. Calm abiding, meaning I put my mind on an object and it stays there calmly, abides there calmly, tranquilly. So if you're building that, the other kind of meditation, we're analyzing something like that, also helpful. If we're building that practice, even at a very small level, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, or then you expand it, extend it, you will notice through the rest of your day and your daily activities, you're building more focus in your daily life. You're becoming more aware of your mind. more concentration, like that. As you get older, as you know, the memory goes. It's pretty common. Without Alzheimer's, the memory goes. Okay. So, and I noticed, when I first moved back in here with my father, who then was in his late 80s, he would come downstairs. I'd be in the kitchen and he'd come downstairs, and then he'd stand there for a minute and he'd say, often he'd say, I can't remember why I was coming downstairs. There was something I wanted, but he didn't, and then he'd go back upstairs and then he'd forget why he went back upstairs. And people that spend their days looking for their keys, their glasses, their water cup, their phone. So that kind of meditation really, and meditation in general, helps you stay focused. So look at your mind wandering. It's very common in meditation. Don't give up. Please don't give up. It's very common, especially in the beginning, but it continues. This is why we train our mind. Meditation is a way of training our mind to stay focused. So look how it goes this week. How is your focus in general and your concentration? Fourth and final circuit, our ability to be generous. Talked about that as well. Our ability to be generous. Generosity for me is a spacious mindset. When I feel generous, my mind's wide open. But it's not just generous about stuff, about giving people stuff. A generous attitude. Somebody's talking and you want to butt in and you're so urgent to say something like that. But then I can think, let me give the space to hear what they're saying. Let me give space to active listening and really focus on what they're saying. There's many ways we can give space to people. Offering somebody, you're at the grocery store, here comes the guy with the one little thing of milk, or here comes the mother with the screaming baby, and let them in front of you. They really need to get out of the store faster than I do. So many ways we can be generous. Generous attitude. Let's go to the next pillar. And then I'll see if there's any questions. Humor. Humor is the next pillar. We all know what humor is. Again, humor comes from the base of humility and humanity. From the earth, from the soil. Again, humor, like humility, same kind of basis. If you start looking for the humor in your life, it's there. It's there. It's always there. You'll stop asking as well, why me? And you'll start recognizing that life happens to all of us. Okay. It makes everything easier, humor. Okay. Including your ability to accept others and accept all that life will bring. So look at all the incidences of what's gone on the past year. Now, there's some grave things. So I'm not saying inappropriate humor. No, appropriate humor. And also the ability to laugh at yourself. It creates a lightness of heart, right? Think about that. The ability to laugh at yourself. To find, I'm in the house alone. I've been in the house alone for this pandemic. I've had my brother and his family over, but minimal, other than a workman in the house that needed, to fix something. That's been it. And in the house, and my God, I thought if I didn't have a sense of humor, I would be lost already. And there's times when I just crack myself up, like something that I'll do. And it brings joy. It lends joy right in there. I can laugh with myself and say, God, what were you thinking? But let's think about bigger life issues where we get hooked. We've just come off of a very tumultuous year, whether the pandemic, the election, inauguration, we all know what's going on like that. The Capitol siege, whatever happens. And people get outraged. So there's a lot of rage, outrage, and Americans have very strong opinions. Very, very strong opinions, and they like voicing them. And so recently I just noticed, my sister lives in England. So the big hubbub, apparently, this Meghan and Harry interview, okay, just happened. And my sister said it's just been the dominant theme on the news in England, of course. So on one level, though, it's yet another thing. And then people have opinions. So when you think about it and you step back a little bit, I don't know, I find part of the thing, I mean, there is a racist aspect to the whole thing, but part of it is also humorous of, it's like a cross-cultural thing. I find American and English culture extremely opposite cultures, even though they share a language. You know, the Americans want to get everything out into the open, and the British are completely the opposite. Completely the opposite. And then you also have this kind of, I suppose, like the royal culture, you know, versus American celebrity culture, which is kind of knocking up against each other. So in some ways, rather than get outraged and have it topple me and spend a lot of time talking about it with people, can kind of say, well, you know, stuff happens. Stuff happens. You know, the Capitol siege as well, that's serious. That's very serious. Okay. And then you ask yourself, what can I do about it? You know, and think, so rather than getting so caught up, why is this happening to us? Things happen. This is samsara. This is samsara. Helps to keep my mind lighter than getting mired in, you know, where I'm then going to oppose the people that caused the siege at the Capitol, the people that created slavery. And, you know, it's all of that is horrible. There's no question slavery is horrible. Okay. You know, and I'm doing my very best right now to do what I can do for slavery personally. I mean, we each have to do your own personal thing, whether it's for me, waking my mind up by reading books about racism, which I've done for years, participating in diversity workshops again and again through the years, because things change, ideas change, perspectives change, right? And then volunteering for a couple of groups. I'm trying to help with poor African-American kids in the town next to me. You do what you can, but then there's a lightness of heart. I'm not going to oppose my agendas on them, on anybody. And I certainly don't want to take myself too seriously, like I'm some big martyr and some great volunteer and sacrifice person. I'm not. I do what I can do. My main thing I do is my practice. The main thing I do is my personal spiritual practice alone here in my room with my mind. So when I go out there, you know, and I'm less swayed with this opinion, her view, his view, these people are bad, these people are good. I don't have to get as caught up. It's like, everybody's good, by the way. That's the Buddhist view. Everybody is good. Fundamentally, yes. Why? Because they have Buddha nature. Because they have Buddha nature. Buddha nature doesn't mean you're a Buddha. It means you have a seed of awakening. You have a potential in you that can develop into a fully realized being if you work on your mind. The sooner you work on your mind. Everybody has that. Everyone with a mind has that. So I like to believe in the fundamental goodness of beings. It doesn't mean I don't have problems with some people. That's my karma. That's what I'm working on, right? You see the Dalai Lama is just friends with everybody. How he comes into being, looking at all beings, you know. But he knows who to set limits with. He has that capital K knowledge. So he knows who to limit, who to protect himself from, who to, absolutely. So we can all develop that. Let me just check for a moment. Any questions? Everybody okay? Okay. The next pillar, this is a big one, acceptance. Acceptance. And this is the fourth pillar of the mind. So we talked about 4 of the mind, 4 of the heart, acceptance. Building on humor, again, of what we said, this is how life is. This is how samsara is. Shanti Deva's famous quote, His Holiness talks about this a lot and uses this quote a lot. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what's the use of being unhappy if it cannot be remedied? Think about this in relation to your life. Something can be remedied. So you come up against something, and you could say the Capitol siege, January 6th, but you know, that's not, so I had some friends that said that, you know, that's not okay. That can't happen again. That's not, you know, okay, what are you going to do about it? So you ask yourself, what can I do about it? You can write your congressperson, different congresspeople. You can go to marches. Okay. Now, the thing is, how do you want to do those things? Please make sure you're doing them with a positive motivation. With a positive motivation. With your mask, if you're going to go. I haven't been to any marches since the pandemic, but I have gone to marches. I bring a sign generally. And I go with a positive motivation of love and connection. I don't go with taking that guy down and yelling nasty quotes about nasty chants about this person, and not interested in that. I really go to like, let's bring love and connection to what we're doing, compassion, peace, if it's possible. That's my attitude if I go. All this work that like that, you write your letters, send your postcards, meet with your representatives. You can join certain groups, like one of our interfaith groups now. We've been writing letters and doing this kind of calling and different things that were advised by an immigrant group, a refugee group, the one I volunteer for. And what they do is they told us what letters to write to change the immigration policies in the States right now, because that's going to be a big focus of the Biden administration. Because Trump set everything way back and we got to our lowest level of immigration maybe ever. 30,000 people were allowed in last year. It's the lowest level ever. And what we don't understand is how, probably a lot of you in New Mexico understand it more, and in Florida as well, is that with those low levels, there's many jobs that immigrants fill that we're going to feel that ramification in some years. There's also many innovations immigrants bring from their countries that benefit our society. So these things with a very low immigration like that, we're going to end up suffering tremendously in the near future. And so now those policies have an option of getting turned back. It's going to be very complex. So our interfaith group got the information. What do we need to do? Do you have a template of a letter? Great. They all have templates, right? So you don't have to think about what to write. There it is. You write it, you change a few sentences, and you send it off. And now they can all be emailed one button and it goes to all your representatives or like that. So if that's something you feel, there's ways you can do it. And then sometimes you come to a thing and you go, you know what? I'm not going to that march. I don't feel safe. Okay. Then I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to feel guilty. If it cannot be remedied, why be unhappy? Because I'm choosing to stay home or choosing not to write the letter or not take action like that. Or, maybe my political activism starts with active listening to anybody I'm in contact with. That's pretty important. Are we listening well to people, right? Often we're not. Often we're not. So again, let's go back to these other pillars. Once we see life in its wider perspective, once we're able to see our role in its drama with some degree of humility, once we're able to laugh at ourselves, we come to this final quality of the mind again, the ability to accept our life in all its pain, imperfection, and beauty. So acceptance is, and I want to make this distinction, it's the opposite of resignation and defeat. It's the opposite of resignation and defeat. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. Okay. Acceptance, whether you believe in God or not, it allows us to move into the fullness of joy. It allows us to engage with life on its own terms rather than railing against everything that is not appearing the way I need it to. All the shoulds. This should have been like this, and this should have been like that. So another interesting thing to explore this week is, and some people are more triggered to this than others. I used to be very triggered this way of, it's not fair. This should be like this. Why isn't it like that? Why didn't he do a good job? That's his job. Why didn't he do that? Like there's some big injustice, as if it's against me as well, right? Years ago, I used to so much feel like that's not fair. So again, think about, when are you railing? What do you rail against? What do you get really upset about? What are you wrestling with in general? Okay. Usually it's a lack of acceptance of something, lack of acceptance. So I've been using the post office a fair amount to mail out the tsatsas, the Buddhist images. And I haven't ever been to the post office that much. And we changed postal carriers at the beginning of the pandemic. A guy that had been our carrier for 19 years on this street retired. He was a wonderful guy, amazing. And the mail came basically every day around 11 o'clock in the morning, clockwork. Okay. So then we had a few different people. And then we finally got our regular carrier. She's a woman I've gotten to know a bit. She appears to be somewhat challenged in many ways, right? And at one point her apartment was flooded out and a number of us gave her some money. She wrote a letter to us. And anyway, and I've gotten to know her, and she's very sweet, and she really seems to struggle with life. So the mail comes at noon and the mail comes at 6, and the mail came once on Sunday, and several days you don't get mail, like this. And then she had surgery recently, so we had somebody else. And I got to know this guy, and he started saying, yeah, everybody's been saying how consistent the mail is. And somehow, I'm like, yep, I imagine. And so there's some people really angry at her that it's not consistent and she's not like Ed and da 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 da, and it's not worth getting angry at her. She's a human being struggling through, so many people are struggling through. She has a job, she's trying to make it work. So I just kind of let it go. I'm like, yeah, so the mail, and whatever, it happens. Like that. So again, and I can see some of my neighbors very worked up over this. I want to call somebody. Who do I call? I'm going to call that, Again, this isn't a majorly important thing, but there's so many things like that. And you can even start with your partner, your spouse. Some of you have had great strides of what you accept, and some people are you still fight over those things. So it's very helpful to think about, acceptance allows you not to struggle against the day-to-day current, okay? And again, His Holiness talks about that stress and anxiety come from our expectations of how life should be. Have a look at that, doesn't it? The stress and anxiety comes from expectations of how life should be. You get up in the morning, perhaps, and you've got a bit of an agenda, but it gets interrupted. So if you want to go back to Richard Davidson, how do you recover pretty well from that? You got set off balance. It happened. Somebody called, they left their keys in the car. They need this. You have to run out suddenly, but you had a whole other plan you were going to do. And now you can't do it. How do you recover from it? Again, so instead of life should be like this, I had this planned. It's kind of like we roll with it. People that roll all the time with stuff, and they're much happier, less fettered by stuff, I would say. When we're able to accept that life is how it is, not how we think it should be, we're able to ease the ride and go from the bumpy axle of suffering, dukkha, suffering, which really means like bumpy axle. That's what the suffering really means. The bumpy ride with all its suffering, stress, anxiety, depression, dissatisfaction, to the smooth axle ride, sukha, bliss, with its greater ease, comfort, and happiness. So I'm going to stop there. Any last questions? Any confusion?
Venerable Amy, Elizabeth has a question in the chat.
Please. Oh, yes, here we go. Sorry, I just saw that. Okay, dovetailing on your comment about His Holiness knowing how or where to set limits, how would we know where to set our own limits in the most skillful way? That's from developing our wisdom. So, as we age anyway, we grow life experience, right? And as we grow that life experience and develop that life experience, we are mature and we have a level of wisdom. We all have a level of wisdom. So what you do is you experiment and you practice and you try something. And then you realize if it doesn't work, I need to set a better boundary and be clear. I realized last time I spoke to the person, I didn't communicate very clearly. So the next time I want to be really sure that they understand that I'm not going to be available on Thursday, but I am available on Friday. So I think we slowly develop those techniques like that. And I think setting boundaries can be very helpful, honestly. My teachers all set boundaries. Does that help, Elizabeth?
It does very much, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin.
Thanks for joining. Elizabeth from New York. So what I'd like to do in closing, thank you so much for joining. It's been lovely to be here. And thank you to both Marys and Tutu Norbeling for hosting. We have some practices to do this week, right? Some exercises. So please try to work on those if you can. And I'd like to dedicate whatever positive energy right now, whatever merit we've created from our time together, may we use it to be more realistic with our mindset, with our attitudes. And from that, build joy there and find those pockets of joy that we can, while they're happening, deeply appreciate. Can we roll that into a practice that will help us reach that fully awakened state so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings? And I'd also like to dedicate to the long lives of our precious teachers. And for some beings who just passed away, a dear friend of mine, Oa in Santa Cruz, and Carol Montgomery Hanson in Oklahoma in her 90s just passed away, and Peter Kay in Vermont. So if we can help wish them no more suffering and to immediately take a good rebirth to benefit all living beings like that. And for all those with COVID to be healed instantly, and may this pandemic end on this planet as soon as possible, permanently. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week. And also I am teaching tonight, hosted by our New York Center, Shanti Devi. If you're interested, it is on my website. You can check and jump in.